Does political polarization have anything to do with uncertainty? I'm Marco Perry. Welcome to the Perry Platform. A new study on political polarization, led by Brown University, shows aversion to uncertainty is often associated with black and white political views, which is another word for polarization, seeing things as one way, and any type of nuance or other perspective would not be accepted into that framework. And based on the study, this appears to be true for both the left and the right and everything in between. These are individuals, who the study is describing, who would view the world with a strong ideological bias, and there really is no negotiation there. It is found to be associated, that way of thinking, with an inability to tolerate uncertainty and a need to hold predictable beliefs about the world. And I can see why that's attractive. The underlying truth here is the world is complicated. It's complex, and anyone who knows anything knows that they don't know much about it. But there are people who don't like that realization, because it comes with questions, it comes with uncertainty, and uncertainty can be uncomfortable. It exposes to you, to some degree, your own ignorance, and nobody really likes to feel that way unless they've trained their mind to accept it as something positive. Things like growth and progress are only possible when there are things to grow and progress too. If you feel like you have all the answers, if you feel like the world is one way and no other interpretation is valid, there really is no growth possible there. But the benefit is, to your own self, you may never be wrong, and you can surely convince yourself of that reality. And we've seen this progress very far in today's world. Ideology has splintered. On the far left and the far right, these type of groups are gaining massive popularity, and with that comes extreme dogmatism that promises you a worldview that cannot be wrong. A worldview that will make you feel like you are woke or you know all the answers, and the other parties are just ignorant. And there really is no hope talking to them because they have their own dogmas, and it's just a situation that your dogmas are correct and theirs are beyond redemption. And I do blame very much so the culture and society that we've established for ourselves for this turn here. Saying that you don't know the answer to things is not truly rewarded, even though it's true in most cases. The media and groups who are acting like activists want to force people to take stances even though they themselves don't know the full truth of it. They want you to have a certain type of holy hue, a holier-than-thou outlook. And that's true on both the left and the right. There's crazy things that are coming out of both of these parties, and they're so steeped in ideology that the average person can't even decipher what they're trying to say. It's funny, I'm thinking back to that whole debate on infrastructure that the Americans are having. So everything's infrastructure now. And that was more of a leftist issue. And then on the right, you have things like climate change does not exist. It's something that has become a centerpiece for many far-right movements, and of course there are others among that. But to be so rigid and such a wrong idea, it makes you wonder why even do so. But of course, as we can see from the study, you do so because you don't want to deal with uncertainty. What if climate change was real? What if the future was in jeopardy? Those are scary thoughts, and they come with some serious thinking, and you need flexibility to deal with that. The easy way out, which has been something our society has gravitated towards, is to not bother with the nuance at all, not to take it in, instead to concoct a crazy idea in your head and to use it to explain everything. Whether it's fake news says that, I don't want to hear it, or whether it's systemic issues, this and that, and that's the sole cause of everything wrong with the world. These simplified black and white responses to the complex realities of our world are not helpful. In fact, all they do is make you feel like you know what you're talking about. When it comes down to it, you're clueless. And once again, I'll iterate, I've seen that on both the left and the right. It's crazy. The need to feel like you have things figured out. The need to feel tribal, to feel like you're part of the in-group, even if it means sabotaging the truth and your own ideals. Many people are making that trade. Even if it means accepting totally asinine ideas and propositions, just so you can remain a member of the left or the right, people are going to do it. Now, let's put a pause on that for a second and move to the study itself. So, scientists at Brown University measured and compared the brain activity of committed partisans, so both liberals and conservatives, as they watched real political debates and news broadcasts. Now, after the viewing session, participants answered questions about their comprehension and judgment of the videos and completed an extensive survey with 5 political and 3 cognitive questionnaires designed to measure traits like intolerance of uncertainty. And based on all that, they were able to come to the conclusion that political polarization does in fact reside in this underlying notion of avoiding uncertainty and being averse to it, as made evident by the contents of the study. Now, in gist, essentially, they would show you a neutral clip, a polarized clip in your favor, and one that's polarized not in your favor, or in accordance with your ideological bias. And they asked you to give your sentiments in accordance to that. And as said, there were 5 political questionnaires and 3 cognitive ones. So trying to figure out your political leaning, and then trying to figure out how things worked mentally for you. Now, there were some quotes that I found very interesting coming out of the scientists. And the first one is, they say, this study shows that some of the animosity and misunderstanding we see in society is not due to irreconcilable differences in political beliefs, but instead depends on surprising and potentially solvable factors such as the uncertainty people experience in daily life. Now, take that in for a second. They're saying there seems to be evidence in the study that the toxicity that we've seen between rival ideological groups may not be due to disagreements in and of themselves. Now, it may be that simply these groups are trying to avoid uncertainty. And the issue is they've embedded their mindset in a political ideology that comes with many dogmas, and the opposition, the challenge to those dogmas, is the issue, not the actual factual claims of the dogmas themselves. Now, taking this into a practical example, let's say you take someone on the far right who says that they don't believe in climate change at all, that it's a hoax, it's a made-up media lie. And perhaps you take someone on the far left who wants to say something like capitalism is evil and we need to destroy this country because it was built based on this evil system, and to them something like socialism and further communism is the way to go. Now, anyone with a modicum of logic could see that both of these ideas are nonsensical. We've tried the communist experience over and over again, not in Canada, but in terms of the world, and we've seen where that leads. Maybe you do get some semblance of equality, but it's not the kind that you dream about. Not everyone is equally well off, everyone becomes equally poor, and in that bucket, you get many other horrors too, like the gulags and death, poverty, everything that you don't want. And for the far right claim, it's very clear that climate change is a thing. To say it does not exist is just to be ignorant of the science there. Now, there is a debate to be had about what do we do, how fast do we move, and all that stuff. But to not even have the same fundamental bedrock there of agreeing that it's a real thing, that's a disaster. Now, it may not be even, based on this study's findings, that the person on the far right is a die-hard believer that climate change does not exist. It may simply be that that's the ideology they've gravitated to for whatever reason, and it answers the fundamental uncertainty question in their life in that regard, for that particular domain. When it comes to climate change, it is complex, and for them, it's much easier to simply say, hey, it doesn't exist. And given that, there's nothing more to talk about. There's nothing more to think about. Now, if you take someone who would tell them, this thing is actually real, it does exist, the issue that the far-right individual would take is not per se that the other person is saying something that's wrong. It's not a factual debate-like interaction there. In fact, what they're getting angry about is the fact that you've challenged the worldview, that you are trying to bring uncertainty back into the equation. And they don't want that. And it's true to the left and the right. Nobody wants that. Maybe that's a better way to say it. It makes you think. It makes you uncomfortable. It makes you feel like there might be things that you don't know. So, you're going to shut that down, and you're going to respond with animosity. You might attack the other person because they've attacked you, they've attacked your tribe, and they maybe have even attacked your identity. Now, Let's say that we were able to manipulate the uncertainty variable. If we were able to make these individuals feel like uncertainty wasn't the worst thing in the world, if we were able to consciously communicate to them that uncertainty is actually a good thing, and if you're concerned with the truth, as you should be, uncertainty just means there is more room to grow and to develop, and to talk to people, and to perhaps change their mind or to have your own mind changed. It seems like the goal today is not that pursuit of truth. The goal today in politics is to just say quick one-liners that will get you many retweets on Twitter and Facebook and to preserve your ideological identity, no matter at what cost. Spewing foolishness is fine, if it means you get to keep your political identity card. Now you can take that same example with the far left. They might say capitalism is evil, we're all for communism, let's establish that. Now, if you were to tell them, hey, that's actually quite foolish, you might have things backwards there. Actually, communism is quite the evil ideology. And capitalism, although it has flaws, it's the best we have. It's the least worst system that we have in the pool. And to think otherwise just signals some type of ignorance. Now, if you were to say that, once again, you would bring up uncertainty into the equation. The individual will be forced to question everything they thought they knew, everything that they thought was right. They'd be forced to question whether or not they've been misled. And they don't want to do that. They don't want to have that discussion because the uncertainty is uncomfortable. And for some reason, we don't want to be uncomfortable anymore. And that's a true mishap in the ideological realm. Only with discomfort can you actually grow and get smarter. Something like a trigger warning, as I've talked about before, is the contrarian idea to that, and it has done nothing to help in this regard. You actually do not have a right to not be offended. And being offended and being uncomfortable and dealing with uncertainty isn't the worst thing in the world. And if we stop looking at it like it is, we could be able to break through this polarized dynamic as made evident by what the researchers here are saying. They're saying truly conversation is not impossible. These are not irreconcilable differences among people. You have the ability to bridge that gap. The thing in the middle, though, that's making it hard to do that is the uncertainty that people have become accustomed to avoid, and perhaps even the social backlash to saying you're uncertain. It's truly a weird world where we've abandoned many things like forgiveness and appreciation for agnosticism. If you end up being wrong about something, and here's another reason why uncertainty is not desired. If you end up being wrong about something, the media, especially if you're a large political figure, the media and your base and the opposing base will tear you up. It's actually more beneficial just to stick to your guns and continue spouting the same crazy stuff that you've done from the beginning, because there'll be far less backlash. We're not incentivizing properly as a society. And it's no wonder that these kind of trends have emerged as a result. It just feels like there's a certain level of maturity missing here. And it's leading to consequences like the ones we're talking about today. Now, another quote that I found interesting in the study was the scientists say, if you are a politically polarized person, your brain syncs up with like-minded individuals in your party to perceive political information in the same way. And once again, you see the benefit there. No ambiguousness, no uncertainty. If you call yourself a Republican or a conservative, and the leader or a prominent figure in the Republican or Conservative Party says one thing, if you have the opposite idea, you might start to think, hey, am I actually even a conservative or a Republican if I disagree with the dogmas being laid out here? And then you begin to question your identity politically. You begin to question if this is actually the right spot for you. And I'll put it out there very briefly. I've talked about it before. I think it's a mistake to identify yourself with any political party. Conservative, NDP, Green, anything. There's no way you actually do believe everything the party dogma lays out. You're far too complex of an individual with a unique perspective on life and unique stances, but you try to fit yourself into these predetermined boxes because you do want that conformity, because you don't want the uncertainty and you want to feel like you're a member of the group. You want to be part of the tribalist activity, and it may not end up being a good thing in the long run, because eventually you do lose that individuality and these unique perspectives that you've cultivated throughout your entire life. If a politically polarized person at the brain level is syncing up with like-minded individuals in their parties because they want to perceive information in the same ways, it's just further polarizing things. Because people on the other side of the spectrum, opposite of you, are going to do the same thing too. And truly you're losing that central playing field. People in the middle are being forced to either pick a far left or a far right side. People aren't meeting in the middle, working together, collaborating. It's not happening. The polarization is making you feel like the opposite individual from the opposite thought party or thought group is something like an enemy. That's not good. Further, it does produce some type of imbalance of power. If you find yourself in a position of authority within a political movement, whether on the left or the right, it becomes even easier for you to swindle the people and to influence them with toxic ideas and to push your agenda on them because they don't want to break away from the authority, because that would signify entering the realm of uncertainty. It would signify breaking away, no matter how slightly, from your political ideology and political identity. And the discomfort that comes with that is to be avoided in most of these polarized minds. Now, let's say you do have an agenda to push as someone who is on the left now. You can easily do so, because those on the left don't want to be tarred as someone on the right. And if you say all leftist people think this, there really is no choice for them anymore. They're going to think that just to become a member of the group and to keep their identity. And the same thing on the right. If all right-leaning people think this and you don't, what's that make you? Now, once again, I do think what we have to do is take away some of this negative sentiment to uncertainty and being in the middle. And it's okay for you not to have a fully formed opinion on something, and it's okay for you to hear other ideas and to converse with other people who don't think the same as you. To not demonize that anymore. It is truly okay for you not to be a liberal or for you not to be a conservative, because what's that even mean? These institutions have certain type of policies and dogmas and rules for operation and whatnot. And there's no way at all that they will never say something that you truly disagree with. Now, you can trick yourself into agreeing with everything they say if you prioritize your status as a member of that in-group. But if you really want to be true to yourself as an individual, there's no way. And if it hasn't happened yet, that there's been something that's controversial in your eyes, it will happen. Why? Because these are humans at the forefront of the institution. And they have their own perspectives and unique ideas and whatnot too, and that's okay. There's no need to tie yourself to the mast of an ideology. Further, it's okay for you to disagree with people who think the same as you for the most part. It's okay to say Jagmeet Singh has crazy ideas even if you lean left. It's okay to say that you don't agree with Aaron O'Toole's direction if you lean right. That's how we move back towards the middle into a productive realm where it's possible for those on the left and the right to work together to build a better future. To not view each other as angels and demons, and I do think it's worse in America. The Republicans and the Democrats, it's a little bit further developed, the animosity there. In Canada, it somewhat is, but certainly not to that same extent. But to make sure we don't fall into that same trap, you have to be aware. And finally, when it comes to this notion of uncertainty, it does bring to mind what Jordan Peterson talks about when it comes to order and chaos. You can't have it all in one way. If your whole life is just order, there is no growth, there is no development, there is no challenge, there is nothing new. Now, while that may feel comfortable, while it may present to you certain benefits, there is a price to pay there. And if everyone's playing that game, society will pay a price. You might see things tear apart at the seams because if everyone is talking about order, there are different magnitudes of it. Order on the left, order on the right, what's it mean? These are incompatible worldviews, and if you want to dogmatize yourself into wholeheartedly believing in one view, there is no room for the other. That tension will amount to something that we don't want to see. Then on the other hand, it can't just be all chaos either. The whole world can't be an interpretive mess. Things have to be true to you. You have to have stances on something. Truly, the answer is in the middle. a balance of order and chaos, to not fear uncertainty, but to see it as an opportunity, to recognize order for its benefits and cons, to recognize chaos for its benefits and cons, to find yourself solely planted in one domain or the other is not going to help you in any regard. It takes a certain level of forethought, of maturity, and of a certain outlook on the world to get to this point. But as the study outlined, many of our differences are not differences in the subject matters themselves. It seems like the differences lie in familiarity, lie in the proclivity of the individual to prefer stability. And if we can break that dynamic, if we can reveal that stability may be a little bit too overhyped, a little bit of it is fine. But to put it as your primary value, to be so afraid of uncertainty that you wholeheartedly accept dogma and nonsense on behalf of your party just to maintain your identity, that's a trade that nobody should be making. And we do have work to get to a place where we can break that spell. But I do think it's possible. And I try to embody that in my work when I advocate for things like being a centrist, liking good ideas for where they come from, not having a certain predisposition to only wanting ideas from one side, just having a filter. What is good, regardless of where it comes from. If it makes sense, it makes sense, and being open to debate, being open to having your mind changed. These are powerful things that we have to get back to, or we run the risk of falling apart. So there's a lot to think about there. If you do want to read up more on the study, I couldn't get to all the details. If you want to find out more, feel free to look it up. It really is an interesting read, and it does leave you with a lot to think about. So that now brings us to the end of our conversation for today. If you enjoyed the content, be sure to leave a review and share. It'll help us grow. And you can find me online at perryplatform.org and on social media at perryplatform. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you soon.